Tejas Pravastuma Vidrishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we are very happy to welcome Swami Sarvapriyananda, who is the minister in charge and head, the Vedanta Society of New York, well-known YouTube guru, webinar series on 4 yogas of Swami Vivekananda and their synthesis. So he'll be speaking today on Swami Vivekananda's Gyana Yoga, particularly emphasizing the uniqueness of his Practical Vedanta. So we welcome you, Swami, and the floor is now yours. And the cyberspace is yours.
Thank you, Maharaj. One second, I'll just switch up this phone. Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Suray Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swami Netapaharine. I offer my pranams to Revered Swami Atmapriyanandaji, namaskars and pranams to other Swamijis and Brahmacharyans who are here. Namaskars to all the participants, the staff members who are joining in virtually. Thank you for having me at this event on the synthesis of yogas with a special emphasis on Gyana Yoga from the perspective of Swami Vivekananda. Is it possible to share the screen here? Let me just see. There is a particular PowerPoint. Yes, there's a share screen function here. So are you able to see this PowerPoint, the synthesis of yogas? Yes.
Yes, yes.
So what happened was Swami Vivekananda, when he came to this country in 1893 for the World Parliament of Religions at Chicago, the very next year in 1894, he came to this city, to New York, and established the Vedanta Society of New York. Not in this building where we are now, but there were a number of rented locations at different parts of this city. And it was in 1894. In fact, Swami Vivekananda's famous Raja Yoga was published from this center. He dictated his commentary on the Raja Yoga, and then it was published as a book from the Vedanta Society of New York. One day, what happened was Swami Vivekananda was at breakfast in the morning, and the printer came to him. One of his lectures was supposed to be published as a pamphlet. And the printer said to Swami Vivekananda that it would be nice to have a design, a sort of symbol or logo. Could you suggest something? And the account goes that Swami Vivekananda very casually on a piece of paper, he sketched out this design and tossed it across to the printer and said, draw it to scale. So that was the emblem of our Ramakrishna order. So that was, in fact, designed here in New York. Now, this emblem, we know, it represents the synthesis of yogas. That is the subject which we are talking about. Here you can see the wavy waters and the swan swimming on them, the lotus blooming, the sun in the background, and the whole thing encircled by a serpent. And it says, Tanno Hamsa Prachodayat at the bottom. The wavy waters, we know, it symbolizes Karma Yoga. The blooming lotus symbolizes Bhakti Yoga. The rising sun in the background symbolizes Gyana Yoga. And the serpent encircling the whole thing symbolizes the path of Raja Yoga. And the swan is the goal, the Paramatman. It's actually our own self, which realizes its own real nature. by the help of the 4 yogas, by the help of the synthesis of the 4 yogas. The Tanno Hamsa Prachodayat is a prayer for illumination, prayer to God for giving us the highest illumination. Now, what does this mean, this synthesis of yogas? There's a letter written to Mary Hale. We find this in volume 5 of the complete works of Swami Vivekananda, where he explains. Swami Vivekananda himself explains, in the mission seal, the snake represents mysticism, the sun knowledge, the worked up waters activity, the lotus love, the swan the soul in the midst of all. Again, once again, later, he would explain it to his disciple, Sharat Chandra, in a little more detail. So this we find in volume 7 of the complete works of Swami Vivekananda. Swamiji said, the wavy waters in the picture are symbolic of karma, the lotus of bhakti, and the rising sun of jnana. The encircling serpent is indicative of yoga and the awakened kundalini shakti, while the swan in the picture stands for the Paramatman, Supreme Self. Therefore, the idea of the picture, in Sanskrit you would say, Ayam Bhava, is that by the union of karma, jnana, bhakti, and yoga, the vision of the Paramatman is obtained. Once again, so the whole central theme of the Ramakrishna movement, of the Ramakrishna order, our spiritual practice is actually this synthesis of yoga, which is the theme of this seminar. Yoga, we know, is yuj. It comes from, it has etymologically 2 meanings. One is yuj samadho. It means concentration or meditation. The other one is yujir yoga, to join, to connect, or from which the English word yoke actually comes. So to connect the jivatman with the paramatman. That connection could be in a sense of a relationship, of devotion, of the jiva, the sentient being, to God. Or it could be union also, oneness. There is a beautiful quote from Sri Aurobindo in his synthesis of yoga. He says all of life is yoga actually. So all life, when we look behind its appearances, is a vast yoga of nature, attempting to realize her perfection in an ever-increasing expression of her potentialities and to unite herself with her own divine reality. Now, life itself is yoga. In one sense, it is true, but then it is too broad a generalization, because if a person is just living life, they're not called yogis for a very good reason. It is samsara, they are drifting from one state of samsara to another state of samsara. It is dissatisfying, it is full of suffering. And therefore, one seeks a release from suffering. One seeks a deeper fulfillment in life. And then one takes to spiritual practice. So that spiritual practice, which is consciously done, deliberately done, that is properly called yoga. But yes, there is a great truth here that in this broadest sense, the entire universe, nature, is a performance of yoga because it is taking us towards ultimate reality. Yoga makes this possible, realization possible in human life in this one birth itself. This culmination, the goal of human life, dukkha nivritti, transcendence of suffering, ananda prapti, attainment of deep, lasting, profound fulfillment, bliss. It is possible. That's the goal of yoga, and yoga makes it possible in this very life itself. Now, Swami Vivekananda's great achievement was this harmonization, this classification of all possible spiritual practices into 4 broad heads. Gyana Yoga, the way of knowledge; Bhakti Yoga, the way of love; Raja Yoga, the way of meditation; and Karma Yoga, the way of work. One can notice here that the different faculties of the human mind. Gyana Yoga is the cognitive faculty, the ability to reason. Bhakti it depends on the affective faculty, the emotions. And karma depends on the cognitive faculty, the will. And Raja Yoga, meditation, depends on the ability to focus. So the 3 well-known categories in psychology cognition, conation, and the affective domains. These three domains connected with focus. This is the synthesis of yoga. So Swami Vivekananda has put it in two ways actually. One way is that the four yogas together, the harmony of the four yogas will lead you to God realization. But he also says in another place that knowledge, devotion, and work connected to the power of yoga. So there he gives special importance to Raja Yoga, the power of focus, the focus on the ultimate reality. It's not knowledge of anything and everything. It is knowledge of our real nature. It is not love of anything in the world. That is desire. It is rather all the power of desire collected together and channeled towards the divine. That is bhakti. And it is not any kind of work. Sometimes we find advertisements. Some great industrialist or businessman have passed away. So there'll be used to be at one time, big advertisement in the paper commemorating or mourning the passing of Seth so-and-so. And it would be, inevitably the line would be there, bahut bade karma yogi the. So there's no doubt he's a great karmi, but karma yoga is different. It is not doing more and more work. It is actually the skill which converts work into spiritual practice. Selfless work done as the worship of God, that becomes karma yoga. The reason for the synthesis of yoga, Sri Ramakrishna's famous dictum, Jato mat tato path, or mat path, as many views or as many religions, so many paths to God realization. Sri Ramakrishna is called a Samanvaya Avatara, and therefore Swami Vivekananda, as his chief apostle, is also a teacher of Samanvaya, of harmony. Famous definition of religion, the goal of religion, goal of human life, and the way to attain it. Swami Vivekananda says each soul is potentially divine. The goal is to manifest this divinity within by controlling nature, external and internal. Do this either by work or worship or psychic control or philosophy, by one or more or all of these and be free. So this is the whole of religion. Doctrines or dogmas or rituals, books, temples or forms are but secondary details. Now notice the synthesis of the four yogas is mentioned here. Karma yoga. You can get enlightenment by karma yoga, a very special contribution of Swami Vivekananda. He says to Swami Turiyananda once that, Hari Bhai, this time I've made a new path. In the times to come, young men and women will wend their way towards the supreme through work, through selfless work. Worship, that is bhakti. Psychic control, the control of the mind, that is meditation or Raja Yoga. Or philosophy, that is Gyana Yoga. I remember once I was talking to a senior Swamiji and he asked me, what are you studying? I said, I'm studying philosophy. And he was a little dismissive. He said, oh, philosophy, what is the use of philosophy? Then I said, philosophy, the word philosophy was used by Swami Vivekananda in one of his most famous lines, which is oft quoted. And by philosophy, he means Gyana Yoga. He means Advaita Vedanta, the highest and most direct of paths to God realization. So what do you mean that philosophy is nothing? There, he uses the phrase by one or more or all of these and be free. So here lies the argument or appeal for the synthesis of yogas. He admits any one of them can take you to God realization, or a combination of two or three can take you to God realization. Or all of these, that is the harmony of or synthesis of all the four yogas. Swami Vivekananda said, would to God that all these elements of philosophy, mysticism, emotion, and of work were equally present in full. That is the ideal, my ideal of a perfect man. Everyone who has only one or two of these elements of character, I consider one-sided. So not only are there four yogas, not only that you can realize God, attain the purpose of life through any one of these yogas, you can combine more than one, but Swami Vivekananda's personal, his teaching, his thrust was the harmony of four yogas. He did not stress one yoga to the exclusion of others. In fact, he has a number of times, he has said this, synthesis of yogas is his special recommendation, and entirely based on what he saw and learned from Sri Ramakrishna. Another place he says, Gyana is all right, but there is the danger of it becoming dry intellectualism. Love is great and noble, but it may die away in meaningless sentimentalism. A harmony of these is the thing required. Swami Premishanandaji, who was regarded as an enlightened master in his own lifetime, very highly regarded in our order, was a disciple of the Holy Mother. In an inspiring letter to a young devotee, a young monastic actually, I think, he writes about yoga vigna, about the problems of obstacles one may encounter on the path of yoga. And he speaks about, say, for each yoga has certain defects. Yoga doesn't have defects, but problems, obstacles may arise when we pursue that path. So, for example, in bhakti yoga, one may get caught up in ritualism. One may become overtly sentimental or emotional. That emotionalism, it's not spirituality, but that is, it may happen in bhakti yoga. It may lead to fanaticism. It is interesting to see that that in general, when you look at the most fanatical religions, it is usually the religions of bhakti, the religions based on emotion, which become narrow and fanatical and even violent. And that is understandable, because if we cultivate emotion, the same emotion which is love can, at the lower levels, can in a trice switch into hatred of people who are outside my religion or outside my belief structure. So bhakti, these are the dangers in bhakti yoga. In karma yoga, the danger is extroversion. So because we are doing a lot of good work, then we do not see the danger in that. We think we are all right. And so day and night being involved is busyness. This is a tendency of the mind. Kathopanishad says, Paranchi khani vetrinat swayambhu tasmat param pashyati nantaratman. Our senses are designed in such a way that they flow outwards. And it's very easy to be outward focused. Karma yoga depends on engagement with the world. And so naturally it requires an outward focus. But the danger there is, tasmat parang pashyati. We are entirely always aware of the external world, that there is any such thing as a spiritual reality. We are not aware of it. We may not believe it. We may not have any interest left in it. So, na-antaratman, the inner self is not seen. One danger of karma yoga is that the defect is that it might make a person extroverted, busyness. The particular danger in Raja Yoga might be selfishness, which is where we withdraw, just the opposite of Karma Yoga. We withdraw from the external world. We sit in an asana. We close the eyes. We do pranayama and pratyahara and withdraw from the world and focus inwards. But this withdrawal from the world, it requires peace. And this effort to protect one's peace and make a peaceful environment can lead to a kind of selfishness, because it becomes about my routine, my peace of mind, and one may ignore the needs of others. One may cut oneself off from the duties of life, and that will not lead to spiritual progress. That will lead to a kind of stultification, a kind of narrowness and selfishness. And then, of course, in Gyana Yoga, as Swami Vivekananda mentioned, Swami Premishanandaji also said, it leads to the problem of becoming a dry intellectualism. I have read all the books, I know all the arguments, I can beat you in debate, but that's not spirituality. That's not the goal of yoga. Now, the recommendation, one argument for the synthesis of yogas by Swami Vivekananda is that it overcomes these dangers. It can mutually balance. So karma yoga will engage us in society, will prevent us from being selfish. Bhakti yoga will prevent this dry intellectualism. Gyana yoga will give balance to bhakti yoga, and Raja yoga will give focus and concentration and inwardness, which is so essential for spiritual life. So Swami Bhajananji Maharaj has, in a beautiful article on the synthesis of yogas, has shown us various kinds of synthesis which are possible. I'll just restrict myself to this one, the first one, the traditional approach. Traditional approach may be called a vertical approach. What is this vertical approach? Let me just talk a little bit about it. But first, a criticism of what I have just been saying of Swami Vivekananda's idea of a synthesis of yogas from the perspective of classical Advaita Vedanta. Gyana Yoga, which is the special topic today. The classical Advaita Vedanta, if you talk about the synthesis of yogas, realization of God from the four, with the four yogas, the reaction will be that no. God cannot be realized, or God realization, Brahma Gyana is not possible through the four yogas. It is possible through Gyana alone. They will say that that ignorance is the problem, and ignorance can be removed by knowledge, and knowledge is generated by Gyana Yoga, by Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, by the hearing, teaching and hearing of the Vedantic texts, by reasoning about it, clearing up one's doubts, and then meditation, Nididhyasana, Vedantic meditation. Now the response to that is, it is true, but let's not forget that there are different approaches to spiritual life. Depending on how one sets up the problem, the result, the method also will follow accordingly. What I mean by that is that in Bhakti Yoga, the problem is set up as that God exists, but we don't have faith in God, we don't have belief in God, we don't have love for God, we do not have pure love for God, not mixed up with worldly desires. We don't worship, we don't adore God, and that's the problem. So the solution immediately suggests itself that bhakti is the solution. If abhakti, lack of faith, is the problem, lack of love is the problem, then love and devotion are the solution. Bhakti yoga is the solution. If that is the paradigm. The paradigm in Raja Yoga is that no, belief in God is not the issue here. The issue is that our mind is restless. With a purified mind and concentrated and calm mind, we'll be able to realize the truth. So restlessness of mind is the problem, and concentration of mind is the solution. That is the paradigm of Raja Yoga or Patanjali Yoga. Yogas chitta vritti nirodha, cessation of the vrittis, the movements of the mind, that is the solution. Similarly, Gyana Yoga has its own paradigm, that it's not a question of belief in God, it's not a question of calming the mind, but it's a question of knowing who we are. Brahman alone is real, the world is an appearance, and we, the Jiva, we are Brahman. But then what is the problem? The problem is that we don't know it, we are ignorant of it. So ignorance has to be removed, and ignorance can only be removed by knowledge. So knowledge comes and removes ignorance. Knowledge is generated by Vedantic study and reflection and meditation. But as we see, these are different paradigms. From the classical Vedanta paradigm, once you accept it all, then the criticism seems to be reasonable that only by knowledge one can realize, one can become enlightened, and not by devotion or by karma. Certainly not by karma, that is the special bee in the bonnet that Adi Shankaracharya seems to have in his commentaries, his rant against the Gyana Karma Samuchaya, that karma is not the way, action is not the way, because you have to remove ignorance. It's like the rope is appearing as the snake. The only way of removing the snake is to realize it's a rope. Karma, if you go and try to chase the snake away with a stick, it will not work because there's no real snake to be chased away. The rope alone exists. So, yes, once you accept the paradigm that ignorance and the world is false, and the false world can be removed only, some false samsara can only be removed by knowledge of the reality. So ignorance is the problem, knowledge is the solution. Then the criticism gets some leg to stand on. Even in classical Advaita Vedanta, there is the synthesis of yoga. So this is the point I want to make here, Even in the traditional approaches, whether it is the approach of Adi Shankaracharya or Ramanujacharya or the other acharyas, there is always the synthesis of yoga. In Sanatana Dharma, the yogas are not left out. Sadhana, in all its dimensions, is always included in all the paths. For example, let me say what I mean. In Advaita Vedanta, when we say that Brahman is the only reality, world is an appearance, and you are Brahman, immediately the question arises that, all right, I am Brahman, but we scratch our heads and say that, but I don't know it yet. It does not feel like that I am Brahman. I feel like I am an ordinary person. And so the Advaitin says, aha, so the problem is ignorance. You have yourself admitted that you do not know. So what you need to do is attend Vedanta classes, study the Vedanta texts, reflect upon Vedanta, reason it out, and then meditate upon it once you have got clarity, and you will get knowledge. Knowledge will remove ignorance. You will be free. You will realize you are the ever free Atman. But there also we again scratch our heads and say, I have been listening to Vedanta for many, many years, but I find that I'm a samsari. I'm not getting any clarity at all. I'm not getting any enlightenment. Then the Vedantin will say, there is a second level of the problem, that the mind is unable to grasp these truths. So this second level of the problem, it's not ignorance. It is not agyana. It is called vikshepa. Mind is restless, unable to grasp this truth. Sri Ramakrishna once, in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, we find there's a discussion of Vedanta going on, and Sri Ramakrishna does not participate. He listens keenly. After a lot of Vedantic talk, he just makes one comment. Kothagulo to bhalo, dharana hawa chai. So this is a thing that our mind is unable to absorb it. So to enable the mind to absorb it, concentration is necessary, and that is developed by yoga or upasana in the Vedic upasana. The purpose of the upasana was to purify the mind, is to expand the mind and focus the mind. Well, there also we may complain that I have taken mantra diksha, I have been doing japa and dhyana for 20, 30 years. My mind is still restless and enlightenment seems to be a far cry. Then the Vedantin will say, the Advaitin will say, there is one more level of problem. And that is the third level of the problem. This is called impurity of mind, chitta mala. And this needs to be removed. Without removing this, concentration is not possible. Without concentration, knowledge will not arise. So chitta mala, the solution is chitta shuddhi. And chitta shuddhi is most powerfully accomplished by karma yoga. So karma yoga will give us chitta shuddhi with a purified mind. When the one does upasana, then it will give us a concentrated mind, ekagra. And this ekagra and shuddha mana, pure and concentrated mind, when we make it come to bear on Vedanta, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, then it is guaranteed that the Brahmakara Vritti, the culmination of Vedantic realization, it will come, and we will know that we are Brahman and we will be free of samsara. The point here is, notice that even in classical Advaita Vedanta, the role of Karma Yoga is fully admitted and in fact most desirable. The role of Upasana, which is, there is bhakti there also and yoga, meditation also there, both together, mental worship. That is strongly recommended. In fact, in all the Upanishads, you will find some element of Upasana. Then only the teachings about the nature of the self, the Atman. So then we have Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, Gyana Yoga. So you see, there is a vertical synthesis. Karma Yoga at the fundamental level, then the advanced level, there is Upasana, which is Bhakti Yoga and Raja Yoga. And finally, at the highest level, Advaita Vedanta or Gyana Yoga. Only thing is, as Advaita masters point out relentlessly, that Advaita Vedanta, Gyana Yoga is privileged, because that alone will generate the liberating knowledge, not bhakti or not karma. But synthesis of yoga is admitted. Go to other acharyas of Vedanta, you will find the same synthesis of yoga, just the order is changed, the hierarchy is changed. So famously, Sri Ramanujacharya, the great commentator, Bhashyakara in the Sri Vaishnava Vishishtadvaita system, for him again, Karma Yoga is foundational. And not only just nishkama karma, but entirety of the Purva Mimamsa, the Karmakanda of the Vedas, is taken as being useful to come to the point where one is ready for bhakti. Now, Karma Yoga gives purity of mind. Then comes Gyana Yoga, and the purpose of Gyana Yoga in Vishishtadvaita is to realize that I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am actually a part of Paramatman. In fact, the Paramatman, Vishnu or Narayana, is the ultimate reality, and Jiva Jagat Vishishta Brahma. It is qualified by the sentient beings and the insentient world. Our real identity is with Brahman, with Paramatman, not with the insentient body-mind complex. So this Gyana, the sentient being, the Jiva, gets. And then, so this is Gyana Yoga. And then one realizes that there's a supreme self, Narayana, and I have a relation with that. So this bhakti culminating in prapatti, which is complete surrender to the Lord. Again, we see a synthesis of yoga. There's Karma Yoga, there's Gyana Yoga, there's Bhakti Yoga. So the point here is, what Swami Vivekananda did was not all that revolutionary. When the critique says that, no, you cannot realize God by the 4 yogas, only by Gyana Yoga. Or there are acharyas who will say only by Bhakti. But when we look at these existing traditions for thousands of years, all of them in some form or the other, they have used all the yogas in some kind of synthesis. And this is very natural. These are the powers of the human mind. If you want to realize God, why will you not use the powers of the human mind? Just the paradigm, the philosophical construct which these acharyas base their teachings on, that determines what kind of hierarchy or what kind of synthesis is used. Swami Vivekananda just gave a general case that all of the yogas are paths, and you can follow all of them together. He would not have any particular objection if you did the Shankara type of synthesis or the Ramanuja type of synthesis. And why should he? Because for thousands of years, these are proven paths of God realization. I just wanted to back this up with a very nice comment by Sridhara Swami. So Sridhara Swami is a commentator on the Bhagavad Gita, and a beautiful translation by revered Swami Vireshwaranji Maharaj is there of the Subodhini commentary on Bhagavad Gita by Sridhara Swami. Sridhara Swami, on chapter 5, verse 2. I'm just going to read a little bit of his commentary. So the verse is Sannyasa Karma Yogascha Nishreyasha Kara Ubhau Tayostu Karma Sannyasat Karma Yoga Vishishyate. Both Karma Yoga and Karma Sannyasa, which stands for Gyana Yoga, both will lead you to God realization, enlightenment. But among them, Karma Yoga is more important. So this is how vertical synthesis is established, to show that I am saying this is a classic move by an Advaita teacher. Ayam Bhava, this is the meaning. Nahi Vedanta Vedya Atma Tattva Vidam Prati Karma Yogam Aham Bravimi. I am not, Krishna is saying, I am, or this is the interpretation by Sridhar Swami, I am not teaching Karma Yoga for the knower of the self, for the enlightened one. But Yata Purvoktena Sannyasena Virodasyat. Because there will be a contradiction with Karma Sannyasa. The one who has realized I am the self is beyond action, not because the body does not do any action or the mind does not think. Body mind will continue to act. There is no ceasing of action by body mind. From the perspective of the enlightened one, there is no action. Action has been given up because all is Brahman, and no action is possible in Brahman. Action at the level of body mind, action at the level of Maya, at the Vyavaharika level, certainly that goes on. And that there is no contradiction between the Vyavaharika and the Paramarthika. So, and it is not prescribed for such a person. Apitu, Dehatma Abhimaninam Tvam. O Arjuna, you have Dehatma Abhimana. You feel that you are this body-mind complex. You are not enlightened yet. He says, I'm skipping a little bit. Dehatma Viveka Jnanasina Chittva. So you do a Viveka. Vedanta will teach you, you're not the body, not the mind. You are the witness consciousness. You cut this ignorance which ties you to body-mind, identification with body-mind. Paramatma Gyana Upaya Bhutam Karma Yogam Atishtha iti Bravimi. So you perform Karma Yoga, which will help you to attain this, this realization. I am not the body, not the mind. I am the witness consciousness. He goes on to say after one sentence, Evam Sati Anga Pradhanayor Vikalpa Yogat Sannyasa Karma Yoga Cha iti Ubhau api Bhumika Bhedena Samuchito Eva Nishreyasam Sadhayata. So Karma and the Anga and Pradhana. This is a reference to the old Purva Mimamsa philosophy. In Vedic yajnas, there was a primary ritual and there were small ancillary rituals to be performed. And you cannot say that which one should I perform, the main yajna or the ancillary ritual. The ancillary is a part of the main yajna. It is an associate to the main yajna. It's like sitting in puja. And before the puja, I do nyasa. Now, if I ask, should I do the worship of Sri Ramakrishna or should I do the nyasa? That's a silly question. They are related as Anga and Pradhana. Anga is part. The nyasa is a part of the main puja of Sri Ramakrishna. The main puja is the Pradhana. Therefore, there is Vikalpa Ayoga. They cannot be seen as alternatives. One is a part of the other. And both in sequence become useful. Bhumika Bhedena. Depending on one's spiritual development, we stress one, Karma Yoga, like Krishna is saying for Arjuna, or you stress the other one, Gyana Yoga, for a person who is more advanced in spiritual life. This is where Swami Vivekananda loosens this tight, only sequential thing is possible, Anga Pradhana, get tied like this. Swami Vivekananda says that in one sense it is correct, but if you go to another paradigm, Ramanuja's paradigm, if you go to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's paradigm, if you go to a text like Naradiya Bhakti Sutra, Patanjali Yoga, at no point in Naradiya Bhakti Sutra will you find that after doing bhakti, now you have to go to jnana to get enlightenment. At no point in Patanjali Yoga Sutra will you find that after concentrating your mind through my technique of yoga, you have to go to Vedanta, Upanishads and Gita, then only you will get enlightenment. So each of these can help us individually, but there is great wisdom in synthesis, the synthesis of great wisdom and advantage in synthesis of these yogas. I will not go any further in this. I'll stop sharing the screen here. And how do I stop sharing the screen? Stop share. All right. Now, a few words about Gyana Yoga itself and its role in the synthesis of the yogas. One way of synthesizing yogas is on the basis of Gyana Yoga. In the Bhagavad Gita itself, Sri Krishna says, Prakrityeva karmani kriyamanani sarvasha yapashyati tathatmanam akartaram sapashyati. This is a verse which has been repeated in different ways 3 or 4 times in the Bhagavad Gita. This is one teaching, that nature alone, sometimes he says Prakriti, sometimes he says Guna. Nature is performing all activities. Everything that we do in this world with our body, mind is done by nature in the presence of consciousness. So this is an insight. You don't have to go to Advaita. This insight comes to us from Sankhya philosophy itself. So consciousness alone is illumining everything in the presence of consciousness, enlivened by consciousness. That shining, everything else shines. By the light of consciousness, everything is lit up. This everything is nature. And nature is performing all action. From this perspective, he says, Yapashyati tathatmana, who sees oneself in that way. I am the witness consciousness. I am the Sakshi Chaitanya. I am the Drashta. And body, mind are performing action. Or the gunas are performing action. And I am the unconcerned witness. This is a Jnani's, not even Advaitic actually. This is the Sankhyan way. Sankhya is also Jnana. So this is one way of harmonizing or synthesizing the yogas. One can continue to do work. Indeed, one must continue to do work. Body, mind are dedicated to action, to the selfless service of humanity. And you are the unconcerned witness. let the body mind do the work as best in whatever role we are assigned. For Arjuna, that was doing his duty in the battlefield. It may be doing our duty in many fields in life. So that is one attitude. The Sankhyan attitude, the witness consciousness attitude, where body mind will continue to act. And since I am the witness, the body mind will continue to act in an unselfish way. If I am Dehatma Abhimana, because when I say I am the body mind, then immediately I see I am Apurna. I have needs. I am dependent on the world. Without food, the body cannot survive. Without one breath of air, I will start gasping. I need medicine. I'm threatened by COVID. So, and on top of that, I also need more things which the mind demands. Appreciation, relationships, more wealth, all of this. So all of these things, they come when I identify with the body mind and feel this smallness. But if I'm not identified with body mind are simply instruments, then selfishness goes away because the sense of smallness goes away. And this unlimited consciousness, from that perspective, what do I need? I have never needed anything, nor do I need anything now, nor will I need anything from this world. Let the body mind, which belongs to nature, let it go in the service of nature. So selfless action becomes possible. Bhakti is a little conspicuously absent in this scheme of things. Yoga, meditation, of course, is necessary for concentration of the mind. So this is one synthesis of yoga possible from the Sankhyan perspective. There is another synthesis of yoga possible from the Advaitic perspective. Both are Gyana Yoga synthesis. This Advaitic perspective is the very well-known verse, Brahmarpanam Brahmahavi, Brahmagno Brahmanahutam, Brahmeva tena gantavyam, Brahma karma samadhina. So, again, the paradigm is from the old Purva Mimamsa philosophy, the Karmakanda of the Vedas, where a Vedic worship is being performed, yajna. There are priests who are pouring oblations with the ladle, the arpana, into the fire, into the Agni, accompanied by the chanting of mantras. So this ritual is taken as a paradigm, and Krishna uses this for every action in the world. How we can, what is the Advaitin's perspective of action? So the instrument for offering oblation in the fire, the arpana, it is Brahman. The one who is chanting the mantras and offering the oblation, that is Brahman. The fire into which oblations are being put, that is Brahman. And the one who is putting oblation, the oblation itself, Ahuti, is Brahman. So the one who sees Brahman in all the factors involved in action, that one attains to Brahman. In the midst of action, that is the interesting thing. Brahma karma samadhi. It's not that you have to withdraw from action. Action is going on, but you see Brahman in all activities. One just technical note here. When Krishna says Brahmarpanam Brahmahavi, Shankaracharya there in his commentary, he makes a very clear, uncompromising Advaitic observation. Brahmarpanam, he says, Natat Arpanam, Brahmaivatat. Brahmahavi, Natat Havi, Brahmaivatat. It is not the ladle, it is Brahman. It is not the oblation, it is Brahman. It's not a fire, looks like a fire, but it's Brahman. It's not a priest who's giving the oblation, it is Brahman. So existence, consciousness, bliss is the reality, and what we consider the world, the fire, the oblation, the priest, the instrument by which the oblation is being given, they are all names and forms. They are not substantial realities. The reality is Brahman itself. So this is what is called Badha Samanadhikaranyam. This is a technical thing which says how can things like say ghee, the offering in the fire, the priest, the wooden ladle, how can they all be same? And one answer is they are all the same because they are not what they appear to be. They are all the same Brahman. So this is called Badhita. It is the person, the oblation, the fire, their appearance, like a cinema, like a movie, like an illusion. And the ground of that appearance is Brahman. In that sense, as Brahman, they are all the same. Now, my point here was something else, that notice this realization is in the midst of action. So all of it is Brahman. In the earlier one, there was a sharp distinction between the seer and the seen, Purusha and Prakriti. I am the Akarta Purusha Atma, and Prakriti is doing all action. Here, it is Brahman alone which exists. There is no separate thing as Prakriti, no separate thing as an individual, no separate thing as an action also. What we call action is also Brahman. What we call the universe is also Brahman. Swami Vivekananda, in his letter to Mary Hale, a poem, Mary Hale had said, I know what you have taught. You have taught that all is God. Swami Vivekananda wrote back in another, in verse, he said, I have never taught such queer doctrine, such strange doctrine, that all is God. But what I have taught is this, that God alone is true, all else is not. So this universe is an appearance, God alone is true. And that, in technical language, is what Advaitins call the Badha Samanadhikaranyam. However, the harmonization of the yogas is possible in this way, keeping Advaita Vedantic realization that it is all Brahman as the basis. Then karma, bhakti, and yoga all become manifestations, so the ways of which one can manifest this knowledge. It's very interesting that Swami Vivekananda defines religion as the manifestation of the divinity within us. See, if you listen to classical Advaita Vedanta long enough, you would feel religion is the knowledge of the divinity within us. But why manifestation? The manifestation is these two aspects. Knowledge, definitely. I must realize Brahmarpanam Brahmahavi. But also, it must be expressed in life. It must be expressed in the actions that I do, in the thoughts that I think, and in the speech that I utter. In thought, word, and deed, this realization must be expressed. Together, they are called manifestation. I remember a discussion in an academic paper on enlightenment. This was at Harvard University, in the Harvard Divinity School, a discussion on Madhyamaka Buddhism. So the nature of the Buddha is enlightened. Now, what does that mean? It has two components. The enlightenment of the Buddha has two components. One is what one might call a paradigm shift, and the other one is what one might call an ethical manifestation. Paradigm shift is, and they realize Sarvam Shunyam, the Buddha nature is realized through Bodhi, or in our Advaitic sense, I am Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi becomes a certain conviction, a clarity dawns that I am Brahman. That becomes very clear, irrefutable. But at the same time, another thing is expected, which is called the ethical manifestation. That not only we expect the Buddha to have Bodhi, but we expect the Buddha to have Buddha-like qualities. That unreserved compassion, that limitless selflessness, and that perfect control over oneself. So all the qualities of a Buddha, all the qualities of a Jivan Mukta, saintly qualities, we expect it from an enlightened person. It's no use saying that I am enlightened, I know that I am Brahman, but in the day-to-day life, I keep on behaving like anybody else. So that is not a very inspiring picture of enlightenment. So enlightenment is realizing the paradigm shift. I am Brahman, I am not body, mind, and all of this is Brahman. Brahman is the only reality. It's a paradigm shift. And also the manifestation of divine qualities. That's why Swami Vivekananda used the word manifestation. How can this enlightenment be manifested? There comes the harmony of the yogas. Bhakti and yoga and karma, that is meditation, selfless action, and devotion. They make this manifestation. They are in fact the manifestation of the divinity within. So the manifestation of the divinity within requires the harmony of the yogas. Swami Vivekananda extended this in his Practical Vedanta. The Practical Vedanta lectures, 4 of them, given in London, there he sets the basis for Advaita Vedanta as the basis for service. And the harmony of the yoga, synthesis of yogas is implied, or in fact explicitly brought out there. He says that Vedanta was always practical. Notice that it was taught in the Kurukshetra, in the battlefield, not in an ashram, not in a university, not in the forests or mountains, but it's taught on the battlefield. So Vedanta was always practical. The highest Vedanta was practical. And he shows how the expression of Vedanta, Swami Vivekananda says the only true religion is oneness. And ethics is an expression of this oneness. Service is also an expression of this oneness. The Sister Nivedita, in her beautiful introduction to to Swami Vivekananda's complete works, she says the unique contribution, the special contribution of Swami Vivekananda was that the one and the many are the same reality. Brahman and this manifestation of the world are the same reality, seen by different spiritual seekers in different ways at different stages of spiritual life. The consequence of this, Sister Nivedita writes very powerfully, henceforth, no distinction between secular and sacred. To have and hold is as stern a trust as to renounce and quit. The shopkeeper's shop and the factory floor of the worker, the farmyard, the student study, they are all fit places for meeting of God and man as the cell of a monk. So no difference between the secular and the sacred. All activity becomes spiritualized. So this is the extension of Karma Yoga. In fact, life itself, what we started with when Sri Aurobindo says that life itself is yoga, this is how actually all of life can be spiritualized through yoga. One final word, science. Sister Nivedita also mentions that Swami Vivekananda told us that science, art, and spirituality or religion are three ways of attaining the same goal. But you need Advaita Vedanta to understand this. And so from this perspective of Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavi, we understand how that even so-called, actually, if you need Swami Vivekananda's, this one and the main are the same reality. From that perspective, we understand how science, which seems to be a secular pursuit, art, which seems to be a secular pursuit, it can actually be spiritualized and can lead us to enlightenment. So not just the four yogas, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Raja Yoga, and Gyana Yoga. Certainly they can lead us to enlightenment, but that is an ancient claim. According to Swami Vivekananda, he goes further. Secular work, like what in the scientists, the artist who is creative, those things can also lead us to enlightenment if we are seeking it. And why just that? Even the most quotidian of tasks, like the student studying, the farmer working in the field, and the fisherman fishing in the waves, and the corporate executive in Wall Street here, playing the stock market, all those actions by themselves, they will not lead to enlightenment, but they can be spiritualized with this new broad vision given by Swami Vivekananda, an extension of the classical Advaita Vedanta. So not only the synthesis of the classical yogas, but synthesis of all life leading to the culmination of God realization. I think I've made my point and also run out of time, almost, I think. Good. If there are any questions or comments, we can take it up at this point.
Swamiji, I have a question.
Yes.
My name is Lata Kamath, and I'm a big fan of you, by the way. I really love all your YouTube videos. I wanted to know, aren't all these yogas, in fact, required in our evolution towards realization? Because end of the day, as long as we are embodied, karma is inevitable. And obviously, karma yoga is required. And like you said, you can't just be a Gyana yogi, you're going to be dry. And even if you do meditation, during meditation, Paramahamsa Yogananda also says that you do need to have certain amount of bhakti in that. If you don't have a good mix of bhakti and your day does not go as a karma yogi, your meditation is also not going to be so successful. So with all that in my mind, I'm thinking they're not even exclusive of each other in any way. They're all really required at least my level to get to the ultimate.
Yes, you're right. And there's a synthesis at both levels. At the preliminary level, revered Swami Bhajananji, in that wonderful article, which I would really recommend to everybody, Synthesis of Yogas, he points out there is a synthesis possible at the lower level of yoga, that is at our level, at the beginning, as you pointed out. because we have these capacities. We have the cognitive capacity, the capacity to reason. We have the affective domain, the capacity to feel, and we act, we do work, the cognitive ability, the willpower. Since all these powers are there, they have to be utilized for spiritual development, just as they are utilized for any kind of secular work. And Swami Vivekananda also points out, at the highest level also, there is synthesis. The synthesis there is more natural. Why? If you look at very spiritual people, I have seen senior monks and devotees also who are very advanced in spiritual life. It is very difficult to say whether they are Gyanis or Bhaktas or Karma Yogis. In their life, you find such a remarkable harmony of all of them. In fact, very good thing. Swami Vivekananda was himself asked, how should we synthesize these yogas? How should we practice the harmony of yogas? He was asked. And his answer was very interesting. He said, live with one who has harmonized all of these in his own life. Of course, he's speaking from his own experience. I'm sure he is remembering Sri Ramakrishna. He explicitly said, I have lived with such a person in whom there was the fullest manifestation of bhakti and jnana and karma and dhyana. So the answer to your question is yes, both at the beginning at our level and at the ultimate level, there is a synthesis of these yogas.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Anybody else? Maharaj, would you like to make an observation?
So we are so happy that you deliberated on a very important question of synthesis and harmony, samuchaya and samanvaya. And Swami Sri Ramakrishna said, it is not even in the case of a religion, even in the family, for example, the person who can live with all kinds of people. Here, I will just one addendum to what Sarvapriyananda said with the kiddies letter. Jnana is all right, it end up with dry intellectualism. Bhakti is good and grand, but it may go with emotionalism. A harmony of all this is required. There, Swamiji goes on to say, if a person cannot combine all this in oneself, we may be able to do it collectively by counteracting, equipoising, adjusting, and fulfilling one another. Every word of this has to be deeply contemplated and meditated upon. By counteracting, one counteracts the other, which was beautifully explained to Swami Sarvapriyananda, equipoising and adjusting. And then he says, this will be a harmony of a number of persons and a decided advance over other creeds. So in a family, in an institution, an organization like the Ramakrishna Mission, for example, a person may be inclined towards jnana, and his companion may be inclined towards bhakti. The third person may be inclined towards karma, and the fourth one towards meditation. We have a brahmachari's training center at Bilurman. 4 brahmacharis stay. And I have observed with great amusement. One person is singing a song with great devotion and chanting his stotras. The other person is closing his eyes and meditating. The third person is busy cleaning the floor and then engaged in seva. And the other person is seriously studying the scriptures. So all of them live, and if you consider all the 4 of them to form one single unit, just like the human body, the heart is not doing what the brain is doing. The heart and brain are not doing what the stomach is doing. And the heart, brain, the stomach are not doing what the legs are doing. So each one of the parts of the human body is assigned a particular task by nature, and they beautifully perform the particular action. And all of them together is called the jiva, the human self. And all of them perform for the sake of the welfare of the jiva in the body. So the collective harmony is a very peculiar idea which Swamiji has incorporated in his lectures and his thoughts, which means Only if you can understand that together we can synthesize, individual proclivity notwithstanding, then you will realize that there is a harmony which is present in the whole of nature itself. But Swami Tapasyananda was a very eminent monk and a great scholar, once told me, God is that supreme reality in which contradictions meet and lose their contradictoriness. So when contradictions meet and get resolved spontaneously, we call that the supreme reality. Even in our body, you can see how so many contradictions meet. I always think of the example, the teeth and the tongue. The tongue is so soft. When I'm speaking to you now, the tongue is effortlessly moving inside the mouth and in very, very strange and harsh and hostile environment. The teeth are extremely harsh, and once it bites the tongue, it will bleed. But the tongue and the teeth harmoniously functioning together for the sake of what I call the self. So you can live together, and nature has designed itself in such a way that all apparent contradictions come together and live in a harmony where each component is contributing the collective good. Simple example. Biology says, botany says, that we are surviving because of the plants and the trees that we have. They give out the carbon dioxide, they give out the oxygen and take the carbon dioxide for themselves. We breathe out, exhale carbon dioxide, and the plants need the carbon dioxide for their growth, and they give out the oxygen which we inhale. Carbon dioxide and oxygen have contradictory qualities. The plant and the human being, therefore, in a sense, are in disharmony. But think of a plant plus human being system. In this system, there is no disharmony. So the whole of life in Vedanta is to have what the modern management science calls as systems approach. Don't have a fragmentary, isolated approach. You have a systems approach which is called the holistic approach of wholeness. The Bhagavad Gita calls this the Sattvika Jnana, 1820. Sarvapriyanda enekam bhavam avyayamikshate avibhattam vibhakteshu jnanam vidhi sattvikam. When all the beings which are apparently divided, appearing to be divided, you see that one undivided, indivisible whole is a Sattvika Jnana, and Rajasic Jnana, Prithakverdi Jnanam Nana Bhava Vidhan. So you see everything is isolated, fragmentary. And such a Jnana, such kind of knowledge always brings into conflict. And Tamasic Jnana is very interesting. It's also whole, taking the small, insignificant part to be the whole. Krishna is whole. You take a small part of the whole and think that is the whole. Frog in the well story. So says you develop an attitude of mind when you see the whole thing in a great perspective. If you have a small perspective, always emphasize only the differences, you will lead to continuous conflict and friction will only be the result. Nature is being designed by God or nature, whoever you may call it, as non-contradictoriness of the principle. Non-contradiction and harmony is a fundamental law of nature. Even the modern science has come to that. More and more we are talking about unification theories. The grand unification theories called GUTS, G-U-T-S in modern physics and science says, always try to unify. Take the unification approach when all differences cease to be without the differentiation ceasing to be. Differentiations definitely exist. It's called the unity in diversity, which is a fundamental teaching of Swami Vivekananda and Advaita Vedanta. Advaita says all the things can exist. There's no disharmony at all. Parasparam viruddhyante tairayam na viruddhyate. This Advaita doctrine does not contradict anything, but only when you stick to your own literalness and swear that is the whole, there will be contradictions begin. So rise above these contradictions because nature itself does not believe in contradictions. So Swami Vivekananda therefore called this the collective harmony and synthesis of yogas in the famous letter. Thank you so much. Swami Sarvapriyananda, we are extremely happy that you could find time to be with us once again. So we always keep calling you. Now the technology has made it possible. You are living in New York and we at Belur, and so many listeners from either part of the world were able to connect. This also a harmony. That's been possible by the internet, which is, I always believe, the internet had consciousness. It will be called the Hiranyagarbha, the cosmic mind. So every one of us is connected to the cosmic mind through the cyberspace. And the cyberspace is the Chidakasha. Now we can easily relate each other through the internet. Thank you so much. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Shri Rama Krishna Arpanamastu.